Did you eat all your ramen?
Yeah, it took too long.
Rip. Yeah. Should have known. All right. Well, welcome to the very first episode of the Unlimited Pasta Salad podcast, where me and Paul talk about various facets of Amtgard Battlegaming and fighting. I'm Salad, and this is Noodles.
What's up?
All right. And today we're going to talk about battlegaming skills and what to focus on. So to preface, this is going to be a general topic where we cover a bunch of things, and going forward we're going to be doing more focused topics. Today we're going over a few tenets and stuff about the various skills and stuff make up like the majority of like a player's skill in battle gaming. And how this is probably going to go is I'm mostly going to conversation, and then Paul will project when he has stuff to say, and we'll just do whatever we do it. So the 5 main points that I'm going to talk about in this, and then we'll go over some other smaller stuff after we get through the main part of this, is game sense and awareness, combat efficacy, positioning and aggression, resource management and ability usage, and confidence. So we get into this. We're going to try to talk a little bit about like what to expect from various levels of skill from an average player or like a new end player, or like what high level players are likely to do. So very first one is game sense and awareness. This is a weird one. It's hard to describe game sense in a very particular sense, because also sorry about the bitrate. My camera hates this. So it's hard to really talk about game sense in a particular way because it's very specific to a lot of scenarios. I can generalize it as like, is the what's my definition? Is the
It's more of like an overall awareness.
game sense in particular is like prediction and deduction skills related to how people or the game is going to operate. So what that means, like when you're pushing on someone and they hit like a wall, right? Like you understanding how a player is typically going to operate when they're forced into terrain, like how they're going to move, or
Ultimately, how they're gonna rotate.
or
Things
like
like that.
you're aiming at a bow. You're aiming a bow at someone, right? They're gonna, if they're unaware, they're gonna move the way that they're gonna move, and you have to adjust for that, and it's really important. If they're aware, they're gonna react to you, and they're either gonna do something like cute or whatever. You gotta read player skill and stuff, and that's a major part of game sense. There's a lot of individual scenarios. There's like a million things I could say, but like I don't have any specific.
Yeah,
I don't have
ultimately,
any
it's
specific.
your awareness of what's going on in the battlefield, and essentially like your reaction timing and skill. Like ultimately, like you mentioned, if someone's shooting a bow at you, are you gonna react as running in a straight line, or are you gonna be like aware to kind of mix it up,
Yeah, and
stop, move, break it up,
yeah,
distract
and
them, kind of things like that.
that's a two-way street. Like they're gonna actively try to react to you while
Yeah.
you actively try to react to them, and you have to read and predict what they're gonna do. As you go down, awareness and game sense is a curve, it's a skill. Exclusively as you go up or down in like a skill ladder, you're gonna see pretty equivalent shift in that. Um, I don't. I'm sure there's at least a player out there that is some weird, crazy exception that doesn't make sense when you see them play. But for the most part, like that's one of those things that's very up or down. So what to expect? So if we're looking at different skill levels when it comes to game sense and awareness, awareness is really the bigger part for this section. If you've been in a battle game, you know you've seen any number of people that you know they'll focus straight ahead. They'll look at stuff in their line of sight, and outside of that, like the game doesn't exist for them. You come in on a flank and they're not paying attention, like they're just dead. You know, and then there's people who like no matter what you do, um, they'll see a shadow or they'll hear your footsteps or something and they'll react to you.
Yeah,
Um,
ultimately, like, are you tunnel visioning, where like, are you just focusing out one person at a time, like a tunnel, or is your, your awareness and your vision kind of more broad and open, where you can take a bigger picture and you can kind of gather everything in at once?
so yeah, I mean the average player or less, like almost everyone has exploitable moments in their awareness. Like even the best player, like if you catch them when like right as they go to throw shots or they have to focus on combat because someone entered their red zone, like there's only so much you could do. There's only so much you can pay attention to at once. Like there are always moments where someone has an abusable moment in their awareness where you could punish them in some way. And there's some nuance to that, like audio cues. Audio cues is a big thing. I'd say if there's a certain subset of people that are dead to the world when it comes to audio cues, like if it's not in their sight, like they don't really register it because usually battle game there's a lot of shouting, a lot of stuff going around. There's hit sounds. Uh, Better players or people that are very disciplined to the game will register important things and ignore less important things that go around them, like uh, the sounds of combat in relation to them. If you hear combat in front of you, like you can see it, you know it's not necessarily a danger. But if you're uh, situated on a line and there's teammates here, teammates there, and you hear hit sounds to your left, you know that's either a danger or something to react to, and it's something to check. But there's also stuff in the game that has a lack of audio cues, like people throwing stuff at you. I say bows are an exception because you can almost always hear the snap of a bow unless someone has some crazy technique I've never seen, um, and that's reactable. But if someone wants to throw a spell ball at you and it's not directly in your line of sight, good luck. You know, there's only so much you can pay attention to at once, and you know, that's very meta changing. If you start abusing that, if every time you look away from someone, they throw something at you, you're gonna have to invest in equipment or techniques that try to passively defend against that, like shields or wearing armor, or you know, just the way you posture your swords and stuff. Um, to block stuff that you're not looking at because you're not actively engaged in combat, so your swords don't necessarily have to be in front of you, and you can just physically react with your weapons wherever. And that's actually a technique I try to times is when you're not focusing on somebody and you're walking through a field, like use your side profile to them because obviously thin, like you have this much space versus this much space, and if you're a thin enough target, people are gonna lose their confidence in their ability to hit you, and they'll either not shoot at you. You know, you can also posture your swords on your side as well, while taking a smaller profile. And
Kind
if they
of
do hit,
related to that, and I know we'll come back to it at some point with positioning and things like that. One of the things I've covered before in some of the battle game classes that I've taught in person. So like for example, I'm a left-handed person, right? Um, so my shield's always on my right side. I prefer to fight left side of the field. My shield essentially kind of gives me the way he's mentioning. My shield covers
yep,
my right side of my body. It covers that right side of the field. I get a chance to focus more on the left side with just fighting. And if an arrow does come or a spell ball does come, it's going to come to my right side where my shield's ultimately going to be at and help a little bit more with that. So if I'm not paying attention or my full attention's not there, That kind of gives me a little bit of leeway room in there, especially if I'm like angling myself just the slightest, then it kind of opens it up a little bit more, and that's still there to guard me.
Yeah. A big thing about maintaining yourself in a battle game, finding ways to passively be safer on the field, and whether or not you have the awareness to know that stuff is coming at you, situating equipment and stuff, or the way you orient your body is a major part of not getting hit by stuff that you're not paying attention to.
Use angles to your advantage. Don't just think of like, forward and side to side. Rotate, use like that half step, use like the 45-degree angle, things like that. A lot of people when they go into like battle games, they go straight down the middle, and then, when they got to rotate, they'll go left and right and just very minimal rotation, but like if you can just use more of that throughout the entire game to help
Yeah, I mean,
position
if
yourself
if you
better.
want to set yourself up in the center of the field as well, like you're giving your opponent
Yeah.
every single possible angle on you when it comes to approaching you on a flank or throwing stuff at you or whatever. And it's like you get the most coverage for rotations and stuff like that, but it also has inherent danger with, you know, just getting hit by stuff in general.
Yeah, your goal
So
ultimately, like in like a team fight, you want to fold your enemy team. Like if you can rotate them to fold into each other instead of you getting pushed into that fold, that'll help you out a lot.
yeah,
It's going to give you better positioning to see their whole team, and it's ultimately going to force them to turn away from part of your team while they're looking at you, or while they're looking at your team, they're not going to be looking at you one way or the other.
yeah. As far as awareness goes, no, just being reactive or trying to be as reactive as you can to stuff, trying to train yourself while what sounds you should be listening to. Like if I hear an arrow, if I hear the snap of a bow anywhere on the field, I'll freeze. If I'm not looking at it, I physically react. It's not something I taught myself to do. It's just something that like my brain started doing. But like even if I'm like postured or whatever, I think I'm safe. I still have a physical reaction just out of discipline for towards the sound in general. Um, is there any other thing else for awareness? I will say that I've said it, but everyone has exploitable moments in their awareness. Sometimes just as easy as walking left or right until someone does something, just kind of half flanking into them, and then you're close enough that they can't really disengage anymore.
One thing I'd say, for kind of awareness and game sense and things like that, this will kind of tie into like other things with
Yeah,
classes and
I have
stuff.
I have a positioning on the list, so we're gonna talk much
Yeah,
more
it'll kind of
detail
go into
about a bunch
that.
of
But for like
particular
game
stuff.
sense and things, let's say like as we start getting more into classes and stuff and we start discussing that, one thing you can do to like help your team and like yourself especially is if you know somebody has like an ability on field, like somebody shadow stepped or somebody's frozen or something, if you can kind of keep like a small mental note of when that happened.
Yeah,
You don't have to be perfect about like if someone's frozen when they're going to come out. Like you don't have to
yeah,
be
I have
perfect, but
I
if you
have
have a
stuff
good
listed that will go.
understanding of
Oh,
like when that's going to be, and you can call it out to your team and stuff like that, that ultimately is going to, help your team a lot more as well.
yeah, resource management is a big part of reacting to aggression or
Yeah.
using aggression to your advantage. And I have a whole topic that on
Nice.
that. But for now, I think awareness is an easy concept to understand, and if you understand some concepts about like line fighting and like that people have to focus on what they're doing most of the time, like it starts to make sense. And if you just play slow and you walk around the field, you'll start noticing and stuff eventually. Um, so the next topic is combat efficacy. This one's really small. This is probably the smallest, but it's it's largely really important when it comes to like defining a player's skill in battle gaming. But you don't you don't need no you don't, we don't expect a lot when it comes to fighting. Like as a battle gamer, like average is good enough. Like if you can actively compete, or if you have the mechanical skill to you know get aggressive right when stuff happens, or and throw proper shots and kind of block stuff most of the time. Like that's good enough as in like battle game terms. Most of your effectiveness in combat for the average person is not going to come from you just zerging and then winning every fight because you're the better player. It's going to come from you abusing a lot of smaller instances or particular advantages you have because of class mechanics or equipment, which we'll also talk about later. And that's something people don't understand, I think, is you don't have to be the better fighter. You just have to try to find a way to make combat work.
Yeah, use your like equipment, like ultimately, use your equipment against them, use your abilities against them. Do what you can to force them to use their stuff without, giving yourself up.
Yeah, it's like if someone wants to shadow step, if you take like 2 steps towards someone in a line and then they shadow step and then you step again and their team kind of backs up a little bit because they don't necessarily want to get into combat. Um, you just start hugging that person. What are they gonna do? Like they
Yeah.
come out of shadow step and then you force a trade on the spot, and
Also be
if
mindful
it's a
of
good
like
trade.
how much you're using in that trade as well. Like if you have one person who shadow steps and you have like 4 of your teammates up on it, that's, you're kind of giving up that number situation there, and the enemy team could take advantage of you, being 3 other extra people down on a team fight. So be mindful of how many people you're putting into it, or how much like resources you're ultimately putting into a fight. If you're putting way more resources than what it's worth or what you're getting out of it, you're just kind of wasting your time, and you're wasting your skills and your abilities and things like that over time, especially for like abilities that aren't refreshing, or you don't get per life or things like that.
Yeah,
Those are really hurt in the long run. It may not seem like it at
yeah.
first, but that could be like a whole game change.
Yeah, I mean, I have examples about stuff I can mention later on.
Yeah.
We're gonna get more into that specific type of thing later. I say this one's the easiest one. It's the simplest. Like it's just, do you know how to combat? Do you understand concepts and stuff?
Yeah.
You gotta learn when you can likely go into engages, stuff like that.
I think
Try to
another thing is a
use.
lot of people in like battle games, they're afraid to go against other people, because they know they're automatically going to lose, right? Like if you're going into the mindset that you're just automatically going to lose that fight, then you've kind of already given it to that person. One thing you should always do, like if you go into a fight in a battle game and like you're not going to win, like you're not going to go out of it, try to go for a limb, right?
Yeah, yep,
It's the same thing in like competitive sports or like esports and things like that. You're weakening the player ultimately to help your team in the long run. If you go into a fight and you get nothing out of it, even if it's a leg, that's going to do 2 things. One, they're weak. It's just one more limb and they're dead.
yeah,
Two, the leg, now they're slowed. They can't run. And ultimately, like if, they're going to get healed, that takes the healer away for a second to, heal this
yeah.
person or res them. So,
I
make the
heal,
most of your life.
especially there's a lot of class dynamics. Like healers are more of a backline class. Most people play healers or backline class. There's the stick
Yeah.
jock healer. This kind of exception, but still, heal is a long incant. Even if you're using Swift, which is itself a limited
Yeah, and that's a
resource.
huge resource to give up too.
Yeah, yeah. Swift is an important resource.
So worst case scenario, like if you're gonna die, either force a
Yeah,
Simo or
yeah.
force a limb.
Try to force a limit. Biggest thing is just try to get something out of it. Like
Like
don't you
yeah,
your whole goal is to force them to lose something in the process.
yeah, break a
Anytime you're trying to get
shield,
trade.
destroy a weapon, make them use like their highest tier, like level 6 abilities, things like that.
Yeah, for anyone but other than the heal, that for anyone that isn't a healer, heal is not unlimited. So
Yeah,
either way, you're forcing a resource if you could take something, or the person dies because they can't move, they lost their mobility, and they're
yeah.
easy to flank.
And
You
even
know?
then, like even if it's just like a leg and it takes up time, that time's still a big resource
Yeah,
for them.
if you are the worst player, if you are by far the worst player, and you know that the person you're going up against is like a high impact player or on the field, like it's a big deal that you just go out of your way to leg this person whenever you get into combat. Like it's a huge advantage.
Yeah. Even if you lose, your teammates can follow up on that. That's a big thing.
Making trades on like better players is a big deal. It's a big thing to try to do and
Yeah.
accomplish in games because it very much disrupts like the efficacy of team play. Okay.
If you have
I think
one high
that's
skill player that can take out like 8 to 10 of your own teammates, like in a line, but if you can put 4 of your players together to take out that one player, it's worth that time ultimately to sacrifice the extra 3 players real quick to get rid of that one strong player instead of letting them take out an additional 8 to 10 people, ultimately giving up the line, giving up space, positioning, things like that. So if you have to make like a bigger trade to not lose more numbers in the long run, definitely take
yeah.
advantage of that.
Yeah, there's nuance I get too, like if you have short death timers or
Oh yeah,
whatever else in
use
your
all
game,
that.
like just go for it. It's a lot harder for them to snowball
Yeah.
in a game. Uh, so well, the next one is positioning. I think this is by positioning and aggression. This is by far, I think, our biggest topic for this discussion. So positioning is kind of like game sense, where it's very very situated. It's very contextual. So I could give frames of thinking for a lot of stuff, but I can't necessarily tell you exactly how you should be playing unless I um, I had your field information or players you have, what
Yeah,
their
and I
skill
think at
level is,
like more
what
podcasts
type
as
of
we go
game you're
down
in.
and things, I think what we'll do is we'll do like we talked about it. We'll do like some video reviews and stuff like that. So if you have videos you want to send us, and we'll kind of go over them, do like a quick recap and like POV stuff, or if you have like a general
Yeah,
field
I
game,
mean,
we'll go over it and stuff for you, and we can kind of recap stuff.
I could tell you a million things. I had like a game to look at, but
Definitely.
I can't I can't generalize this one as much because it's just text. Um, I could say some things about positioning, like big thing. This is probably the biggest one. Is the 18 to 22 rule. Um, that's the safe zone for pretty much everything. Magic being the biggest threat in this game. Projectiles reactable. Put stuff in the way. Dodge magic balls. Um, but magic, if you're within a certain range, you either have to run at them or you have to back up. That's it. But the sweet spot is playing at 18 because that's enough room that you can actively engage people when you need to. Um, it's probably the optimal like spacing for most scenarios where you're not giving them anything that more than you have to, and you can step into your range to cast magic, and you can step out of their range when they cast magic. And that's a big thing. The biggest
Additionally,
thing is
like
training
the
yourself.
20-foot rule, like not everybody, but like the average person can cover 20 feet of distance in less than like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Three
Yep.
seconds is a lot longer than people really count. Most people
Yeah.
they think 1, 2, 3, and that's 3 seconds. But 3 seconds,
Most incants are
it's
longer
like
than
if a
that.
caster's casting something at you and you're within range, 9 out of 10 times, if you rush that caster's gonna, they're gonna bail because they're afraid they're gonna get hit, and they're gonna stop their incantation. Unless you have somebody who can either, has ambulant, or somebody that's confident enough that they can block your shot, or get
Yep.
that, that spell off faster than what you can chase them down. And I don't think that's as common, or I don't think a lot of people think that way, and they see someone running at them and they either freeze or they bail and they make the run for it. So if you're
Yep.
closer than that, just you're more often than not better than taking just charge at them, and you're gonna
Yeah,
get more
I mean,
value out of it.
if the field position allows you to, and they're by themselves, and you just want to cast something
Yeah,
dumb on you,
exactly.
like hold person, like I just go for it. Like if you're in a position where you're gonna beat them in a 1v1, especially if they have a free hand because casting, like just go for it. If you can react fast enough to their spell where you can bolt, um, it's a good habit to have. You're usually not losing very much out of it, depending on what their field position is like. I mean, if there's teammates, you don't do that because you're just gonna die. They're just gonna get killed because people are gonna rotate on you most of the time. But if you don't know, you can always just take 2 steps back, and the only thing you've done is just made it so they're not casting on you anymore. Either way.
Also, when we're talking like 20 feet, just as a heads up, most people think 20 feet is a lot farther than it really is. 20 feet
Yep.
is realistically, it's not that far.
Yeah.
Most people, you'll be like 35, 40 feet away, and people will start casting at you, and they legitimately think it's 20 feet. If you can get a good idea of what 20 feet is, and like, especially for people
Yeah.
like
It's a
I did
very, very
construction, right?
important skill to learn.
Yeah, so like I do construction, or I used to do construction. People who like do carpentry, construction, roofing, things like that, they'll have a good idea of what 20 feet is, and they can, just spot that off with not much effort. Where like the average person who doesn't do a whole lot with feet, it'll be off by like 5 or 10 feet a lot of times. And if you're really good about that and you can, use that to your advantage, that's a huge thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning what 20 feet in this game is a very important facet to your
Yeah.
ability to space properly. Um, Spacing is ultimately one of the most important things in this game, as far as skill goes, because it determines your ability to do basically everything.
And on like the same rule, like if you're like 21 feet or something, like or if like someone's 21 feet away from me and they cast something at me, I'm just gonna take it. Like I'm not gonna be an asshole about it.
Yeah.
Like there's that definitely that gray area. Like if I'm very adamant about it, like I know I'm within 20 feet or like outside of 20 feet, like I'm not gonna take it. But like if it's right on the edge, even if it's slightly over, I'm just gonna take it.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
Um, so I can talk a little bit about the frame of thinking for casters. Caster in particular is always going to want to hover around 20 feet. It's the sweet spot for everything for a
Yeah,
reason.
unless you're like wizard or something who has like extension or ambulant, like then do what you gotta do. But
Yeah, I use if I actually serious casting magic with someone, I'm going to use Amber basically every time because
and it also
instead
depends.
of
Like
giving
if
you the
you're
opportunity to walk at a range, use Ambulance and guarantee what you're not gonna.
Yeah, and it also depends. Like, are you more playing like a range caster or are you playing like a spellball caster? Because that also is gonna vary. Like, at what point, how far can you really
Yeah,
throw a
if
spellball,
you're
and how
playing if
far
you're
can you
playing
throw it
spell balls, you're
accurately?
gonna probably want to be a little bit closer. You want to reduce their ability to react to
Yeah.
your spell ball as much as physically possible. And most spell balls punish just by getting hit. So like, if it touches anything, it's a positive effect.
So
Um,
realistically, how far can you throw and how accurate are you can definitely be a big
so
play in the game.
there's a couple ways you can go about trying to optimize your caster position, and um, ultimately it depends on your field. There's no definitive rule I can really give you. If you have to play a certain way because it's better, like just do that. Sometimes there's a person that will literally just steamroll your team, and if you aren't actively stopping them, that's it. Like if you have to play that way, that is how it is, the way that you have to. But there's a couple lines of thinking that I think are good as a caster, and it's either taking center space as much as you can, so you control this bubble that you can cast in, and being center space means that you can rotate uh, to sides, faster. Anyone tries to move around you and stuff like that, and that gives you the greatest coverage on your ability to cast on people. Or you play a flank and you hope that people aren't congested on your side, and then you try to use magic to force like advantages in skirmishes, because you gain like a slight numeric advantage because you're casting hard CC, or you cast like a hold person or something, or you hit someone with a spell ball that forces them to remain stationary, and then you push on that because one person can't move. But I think that's
Yeah, keep in mind if
really
you're
all
gonna
it
play
is.
center field, like as much as you have situation, like you can view both sides of the field. Keep in mind that you are also vulnerable from both sides as well. So where you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a
Ideally, if
360
you're playing
view,
like that, you should be playing with someone.
yeah,
Field by yourself. I mean, yeah, most fields will let you get away with it, but it depends on the caliber of players. Like sometimes you'll just have like field setups where like 20 people have projectiles. You're just gonna have a bad time. or they know that you're about to cast, so someone else runs at you, and you just can't deal with it. Um, something to say, what was it?
Kind of same thing with like archers and stuff too. Like archers can be very useful, especially like backlines where they're hard to see, but they can reach long distances. Um, One thing that I've covered before in like some of the classes I've taught is like play those off angles as an archer. If you're playing, like a
Off
pocket
angles are a
right
big deal.
or like a pocket left, right? You get to it's the same thing with the shield thing, right? You get to view one huge angle of the field without having to worry about left and right. You kind of only get to focus one direction, and then you can still get big picks off of that by having better positioning and things.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you're playing like an assassin with a bow, right? And then you have a large enough field that you can walk around. Not, they're only gonna spread out so much.
Yeah.
You take a huge flank and you have a bow that has like a large amount of range, because that's just how bows work. But you also have escape ability, so if anyone tries to contest you, you can just leave. Like what does their backline do when you're on total flank, right? And you can just shoot at like basically their entire team. All their passive defense is postured towards the front, right? Because that's pretty much how everyone play. And you just get to they just get to punish their backline, and then their backline sits there like, well, shit, and then they have to rotate like off their team to the side, and then it exposes just a ton of space, ton of positioning.
One
Or if
thing,
someone tries to contest you, the biggest thing is that someone should realistically just run it. You can't do that.
yeah.
But if you know you have poison, you switch to a weapon. If they're unarmored, you take a trade where they just lose, and then you keep doing it. Someone has to keep running at you until you run out of abilities, so you can't do that anymore.
Um, One big thing, I see in battle games and also this kind of ties to like esports too because I like to use esports for like my references and things. One big thing people have like between positioning and like lack of game sense I think is just very common. It's just like a natural ability that most people do and it's like a really hard, thing to get out of. It's a hard habit. Um if you have someone who's behind you and you say, you know, blah 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 John Doe, the barbarians behind us, right? And you say we have someone flanking. 9 out of 10 times, you have too many people who will turn around, and it
Yeah,
gives that
yeah,
team the big advantage.
absolutely.
So it's kind of that same thing. It's you're
I
taking
think I
one
thought about
person,
this, but I didn't write it.
yeah. So you take like one person who now takes the point of view away from 5 or 6 other people instead of
Yeah,
just 1 or 2 people, and now your front line is down that 5 or 6 people, and however long that person can steal their advantage, especially like an assassin, hey, blah blah blah, step in the shadows, right? Now you have 5 or 6 people who are just staring at this guy. They know he's there, but they can't do anything about it. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna turn back around and let the
yeah,
assassin kill you, or are you gonna focus him and let your
yeah.
front line get destroyed?
I think I might have taken this off my
So
prep, but the big
be
thing is
aware of how many people you use.
a lot of people have a problem with understanding how much resource they should commit to uncomfortable situations. Um, if you've ever played a MOBA, you've seen this probably a million times. Someone goes to backdoor, someone goes to your team, or they do something stupid somewhere, and people will like three of your 5 players go back all the way, like to deal with it. Like realistically, they're X HP and um, one person can do it, but you lose all your resource. You're giving up space um, just because you decided to over respond to something like that. And I think uh, strong assassin play knows that people have an issue with that, and they will actively abuse.
Oh yeah, for 100%.
Um, they will actively abuse stuff like going through your team to get you to respond.
So
Because I
like,
mean, if you have smart teammates, like all it takes is teleport through them, and then 3 people turn around 'cause they're like freaking out about it, and then you come out, and then you just use Shadow Step instant, and then you take like 1 or 2 hits, and then your team forward, and then like 3 people are turned around. It's just really bad for them.
Yeah, know how many people you're gonna give up for that, and know what you're putting at risk for that as well. Because if if you have one player that turns around that can force stop that person, like say somebody's
Yeah,
insubstantial,
the
and you have
big
a
thing about
wizard that like
assassin is
drags
that
them
any
below.
one person can follow them around and it basically force them to be a 1-1, especially if they're
Yeah,
blinking where they can't come out if you're next to them. If they want to play in your team, like if one random person follows them around, they literally cannot come out until they get you off. So you can just force a 1-1 until they decide that they're going to retreat back into the game, and like there's nothing the assassin can possibly do about it unless they have like ally scout to track them.
yeah. So be smart about
Um,
your resources. Don't just give it all up for that. Because ultimately, if also don't put too little into it. Because if it's someone, for example, like a high level player who gets behind you, and if it takes 4 of you guys to take him out instead of letting him wipe your backline, but you only send one person, and then now your whole team's backs is turned to this guy, then he's just gonna wipe your whole team. So it's kind of a big trade off, and it's one of those hard things to balance. And especially like most people's general, it's just built-in habit. Your natural instinct is you hear someone's behind you, you want to turn, and it's good to acknowledge it and be vocal with your team, like, hey, I got this, and that way your team all doesn't turn with it. But also, like, if you
yeah,
need backup, be vocal about that as well.
yeah. I mean, a big. It's one of those mental discipline type of things. You just need to naturally understand, like whether or not you actually have to react to something, or if you can trust your team on it.
Um,
And sometimes you do catch those opportunities where, like, those moments where a bunch of people have that same line of thinking, and then no one does it, and then you just die anyway. But I mean, that there's a game sense. There's a game sense scenario for you.
yeah, be vocal with your team. You have a voice, use it. Explain what's going on. If you're gonna push, tell your team to go with you. If you're making a game plan, be vocal with your team about what's going on. If you die to someone flanking you, for example, the real game thing is, you can't, like, ultimately people do it, but like ultimately you shouldn't be saying, while you're dead, like you shouldn't be walking to spawn and be like, hey, this person's over here.
Yeah, you're not
Like
allowed to actually talk when you're dead, but
you
you are allowed to declare that you're dead. And
yeah, so what I
people that
like
are
to
smart
do
and competitive will yell dead, so
exactly.
people know.
Yeah, if I die to someone flanking, or like if I'm in an off position and I die, I will scream dead like 3 times. I'll
Yeah,
just go dead, 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 like as
yeah,
top of
you're
my
allowed to
lungs.
do that. But if you do anything, but if you actually talk, that's
Yeah,
technically
don't do
allowed.
that. Don't be that guy. But yeah, the best way to do it is just scream dead. If your team picks up on it, then that's perfect. That's all you need to do. If they don't, then that's one of those things where you just got to be aware of what's going on, and situational awareness, game sense, things like that. Be more aware of your surroundings.
Um,
Use the game rules to your advantage without exploiting gray areas and things like that.
yeah. Um, so the general rule with positioning, kind of talked about off angles, but actually I'll go into that. Um, Off angling is a very good thing to do. Most like field setups will have someone off angling naturally because that's just kind of how it works. People tend to spread out. They don't tend to cluster very much. There are some exceptions. Certain people tend to gravitate towards certain lines of play. Like it's hard to read new players on this one because it's like a personality kind of thing, where some people will cluster and some people will always try to spread out. But I think the biggest thing with new players that you can usually expect is they're either gonna kind of wait for something to happen because they don't necessarily know what they can or can't do, or they're gonna just run around the field until they think they have an opening. I think I mean, everyone knows like the like
The newbie foo.
the the newbie guy that like takes the biggest flank you've ever seen in your life and goes like completely behind the enemy team. He
Everybody
spends
does it.
like three
Everybody does
minutes
it.
doing it, and then he gets to someone. They look at him and then he dies.
Yep.
You know,
Everybody
like
does it.
I respect the energy. It's better than not doing that to some extent. Like you are causing people to look at you, you are causing pressure. But there are better ways to do that. Realistically, like general rule is you should always be doing something. If the positioning you're taking on the field doesn't allow you to do anything, if you're playing like a martial focused class, you're playing something that requires you to melee to be efficient, like you should move around the field until you have something you can do. And I'm going to talk about safe play later on, but basically the idea is you should walk around the field. You should try to take positions. Your team will usually cover like the pressure, like the pressure areas. Like you don't have to do everything yourself, obviously. So you play for yourself. If you want to play for yourself, you take
You gotta
positioning
take that
that'll
risk.
you gotta play positioning that'll let you do something.
Um,
So
Real quick before we get too far past it, I kind of want to go over that like the newbie thing real quick. If you have a player on your team, who's new and is, doing like the big flank, like I said, everybody does it. I did it when I first started playing. It's a natural thing until we get like a grasp of the game.
it makes sense
It does. It
until you
100%
realize that
does.
it doesn't. It
It
requires
doesn't
someone to
work the
not be
way
paying
that you want it
attention.
to. But like
Yeah,
ultimately, if you have somebody on your team that
yeah.
is
There's
like
some
that, work
finesse.
with them around it. Especially like for example, if it's a player who's playing barbarian and they're a high enough level where they have fight after death, right? Work with them on that. Use them as bait to open up like a hole. If you can get them to go like a flank where they have one or two people, they're not trying to attack them, but they know they're there. Their attention's kind of it's not a full attention on you anymore. They know it's there. They're gonna have to pay attention to him. And if that player can get in and use like they're just gonna essentially just suicide in the game, and they're just gonna just instantly die. Let them use up their abilities. Let them open up that pocket for you because then if you can make that gap with just a new player who's not super confident or ultimately like let them use that fight after death. Let them break that hole for you. They're making a bigger impact than what they ultimately think they are, and like until they learn the game more, it's still a big help.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. We're still talking about it. Like the whole point is you want to try to be decent at all times.
Yeah.
If you can't, if you're the angle you're playing at, the field position you're playing at doesn't allow you to just take trades or engage or hit people with stuff, like you just need to keep repositioning yourself till you find an angle that lets you. Eventually you will have an open. Like it exists, whether or not you have the skill to know or see it, or have the timing to react to those openings. They're there. It doesn't matter. They are there. Like at some point you will accomplish something. But so
Yeah,
the next thing
don't be
I have,
discouraged.
yeah, I have a whole thing about confidence after, but um, so taking space is a huge concept, and I feel like this isn't something I know because I played Amtgard. This is something I understand because I played a lot of MOBAs in my time, and it makes more sense when you,
Esports, big translation.
yeah, it's a big thing. Like if you play Overwatch or something, like you understand that taking space is important. If your opponent wants to back up, like there's a lot of positives for you to be more
Yeah,
forward than that.
like one of the big ones I like to use, and it's like it's not a natural reaction. It takes like a lot of thinking about, or even people still second them guess on it. Let's say the enemy has to capture a point, and you're playing defense, right? If you play far enough into their line that regardless they have spawn advantage, right? No big deal,
Yep.
whatever. But if you play far enough in there that if you die, they still have to move forward back to your line, which gives you enough time to move back. Versus if you played in the center, they're just now going to be in your spawn. So playing forward more into their territory and using that against them, even if you're going to die, that's fine. But take that space advantage.
Yeah, space. There's a lot. There's a whole lot of reasons to take space is important. Like, if you take enough space, you're in their spawn. They no longer have field to move around.
Yeah, you're
So
cutting
they
off
get forced into
angles.
a wall. You have control over angles. you have more opportunities
And then
for
ultimately,
stuff like that.
worst case scenario, you have your spawn to fall back to,
Yeah,
or if you need to give up space to make better angles for you, then you have that ability. But
yep,
not starting with that, you force yourself into a limited, availability.
yeah, and depending on the game type, like if you're in a CTF or something like that, you're towards their objective and they're farther away from your objective. So when you take space, like they have to then be able to cover that much distance. Even if they're able to like get picks or snowball, there's still literal field cover that they have to break, which takes time, which gives you more time to disengage, to respawn, to get abilities off on people, and overall, like there's situations, but there's usually very little downside to controlling space. Um, One of the big parts of this was aggression, but we kind of intermixed our talks about that.
Yeah.
Um, so
Don't be afraid to be aggressive, but also
yeah,
like know when
yeah,
it's appropriate to play
yeah.
passive and defensive. If
Um,
you're like, say it's a time game and you're on defense, you know, eating away at the enemy's time because they're not playing too aggressive and they're not breaking the line or anything like that. Eat up the time. There's no need to play aggressive and
yeah,
you know,
usually for the most part, it's aggressive play that will either make openings or give openings. It is a two-way street, obviously, like a lot of stuff in this game tends to be. Um, but if everyone's playing passively, until someone makes a mistake and they get hit by like a projectile or something, nothing's gonna happen. So it's it's a good thing to be aggressive because it accomplishes taking space, it accomplishes forcing trades, it accomplishes making openings, um, and the thing we talked about before is it accomplishes resource. Being aggressive tends to force resource usage. They aren't going to beat you in melee because you're being aggressive, but you're not necessarily fighting them. They're going to do something else. Um, and those options are almost always ability on you or disengage. And either way, you're either gaining space out of it or you're forcing resources, and that's a positive for you that you can then later exploit. Um, Concept that is very important, but isn't necessarily itself aggression, is posturing. Um, so pretty much no matter how good or bad of a player you are, your existence is naturally threatening to the enemy team, and the fact you're there is limiting in the options that your opponent can do. So, like, if you had a 40-person team, like new players, versus like a 20-person team of like average players, like the 40-person team is threatening whether or not they're better or worse because there's more people that can do more things. And if you try to be aggressive, you have a disadvantage because there's more people to react. And if they're all posturing, if they're all there to look scary, you have to find ways around that. Um, the idea behind posturing is that when someone tries to do something, you make yourself look like you're going to do something, but you're not necessarily going to. It's the threat that you can do. To express this concept, if you've ever played like a MOBA or something, the team's approaching you. They have the five man or running it down. Like you look like you're gonna, use abilities on them. It might like they're either going to just continue running at you or they're going to take the consideration that you could be doing something to them, and then they're going to either play slower or they're going to play around it.
yeah,
And
and
that
that could be
that gives you time, and that's a very significant thing that people don't really consider all that much. It's just the fact you can do something forces someone to adjust their play, and that's a limiting factor in someone's play.
and sometimes that could just be as simple as like having, if you have a pole arm, having it, ready to like stab somebody coming in, giving yourself distance,
It's
or
like faking
a
steps.
yeah,
Someone starts moving towards you, and you start faking steps, or you step, or you like throw like dead shots, shots that aren't going to hit anything at them, to make them think that you're trying to do something to them.
yeah, or
Like
even having like a bow, with an arrow ready to go, or a spell ball,
that's
in your
yeah,
hand. Like that
that's
presence
a very
there
big one.
alone is like, if I'm running, especially if I'm a player or a caster or anything that doesn't have any resistance, and I start like running towards somebody and I see that they have a spell ball and I can't tell like if it's charged or not, and they're looking at me with it in their hand,
Yep.
more often than not I'm gonna slow myself down.
Yeah, you have to
And I'm
respect
gonna,
it.
yeah, you don't have a choice. Like if you don't respect it, it's like you're just gonna either take the effect, or you're taking that gamble that that it's not charged, which 9 out of 10 times it's probably charged. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean it's a very fast incant in most cases.
it'd be really
A
silly
smart
not to.
player will abuse the fact that you can't know that. You know.
Exactly.
Um, but that's the big thing uh making yourself look scary at all times. That's the biggest thing you want to do in terms of aggression. Is if even if you're playing slow, making yourself look scary so people don't do stuff is going to accomplish a lot in terms of game. You force the opponent to play slower, you give yourself more time to find or make openings, like we talked about before.
And it's like, for example, between positioning and just standing there. Like, so I do a little bit of cross gaming and stuff. So like I play Amtgard, I play Dag, play Hearthlight, and like one of the events we went to was a Hearthlight event, and it was just like a big bridge castle game. It was too hot out. I didn't want to play. No one knew that. What I did was I literally walked to the left of the field, walked down to their spawn, like sightline, and now I have like 4 or 5 people who just don't want to charge me because they either know that I'm going to push against them or that my team's not too far behind. And so now it's going to force them to funnel over, or they're just going to give all their attention to me and try to, gank me. And
Yeah. I mean, it's 4-on-1. Like that's an advantage. Whether or not they force the trade, like it's still
yeah,
advantageous. Advantageous.
but versus
Um,
them just giving up like the whole, that would be their right side, our left side,
yeah, and
versus them.
if they ignore him completely, he just has a full flank. It's just
Exactly.
the
So I don't have to do much to make myself there, but if they don't do anything to retaliate against her or to challenge it, then I get a free opening and I get to pretty much do whatever I want.
yep. Um, and as a rule, is that being aggressive will um prevent counter aggression because people have to react or respect the fact that you're being aggressive, because no matter how good of a player you are, you have the ability to kill people. You have the ability to deal damage. You know, and if you are the better player or you have the better team, aggression will pretty much always be in your favor, unless you make mistakes. So, it's all that. I don't know if we have anything more to talk about with that one.
Yeah, probably not. Not now, at least. I know it'll come back
Not,
up in another
yeah, it'll
discussion at
come
some point.
back up. So the next big topic is simple. It's kind of stupid, but confidence. Um,
Yeah, this is one of my big things that I like talking about, and this like also goes into tournaments as well. And I mentioned this to a lot of people. Um, I get a lot of people like when we go to tournaments or games, they're like they go up against somebody and they're like, I know I'm gonna lose. They instantly have that mindset that they're gonna do worse or they're gonna do bad. There's a good chance you might lose, you might not. But the biggest thing is if you go in with the mindset that you're instantly gonna die, you're gonna start tripping yourself up. You're not gonna give it to your full. And a lot of people can pick up on that they know you're being hesitant and that you're not giving it at all. So when you're not confident and you're not giving it everything, it's easier to pick apart those people, and you can see what openings you're going to be able to build off of. Those people tend to be more hesitant. They tend to stutter more. They're a lot scared to make like the big movement. They're usually like
yeah, people who
middle
lack
to like
confidence are
last in
typically
attack.
not going to do anything before you. So you'll give you
Yeah.
all the priority in the world to initiate and form the combat to the way you want it to be.
The biggest thing is like even if you're going to lose, treat everybody the same, right? When you go into that battle, you treat the newest player like you do a veteran. Like I'm
Yeah.
not saying you got to beat up on a new player or anything like that, but you got to respect that that new player could just instantly wipe you if you go in there with
Yep.
that
Yeah,
you
the
get
the
lazy and
mentality that you're
unconfident.
going to win is also
Yeah.
has a similar effect.
So if you go in and not giving it everything and you get lazy or like your confidence is really there, you could get picked apart so quick. But if you go in with like, you're going to give it everything, you're ready to go, you're pumped up, you have a better chance mentally. And it doesn't sound like it, but I watch it happen all the time, especially in tournaments. You watch people get like super hesitant. They're afraid to make shots or make the big moves. And you can see the hesitation or the stutter in their shots or their footwork and things like that. And it's the same thing with battle games. You get people who want to start doing like abilities or they want to throw a shot or an arrow, but they're just afraid that what's gonna happen. And you gotta own up to it. You gotta just put that in there. And but you also at the same time you have to respect like your enemy as well. Don't automatically assume that you're 100% gonna get that fight because it
Yeah.
take like just an instant and it'll turn around on you.
Yeah, and the big thing about the same similar line when it comes to battle gaming and confidence in that regard is that if if you're incompetent, and then someone forces a fight on you, and you have any hesitation in your decision making or anything like that, you are like if you get panicky, like you're probably gonna lose. Like you're not gonna be able to focus on fighting enough. You're gonna make mistakes, or you're not gonna disengage properly, or you're gonna have that moment where you probably could have used like a shadow step or a stone form or something, and you're not gonna be able to do so fast enough because you weren't focused on your reaction rather than the situation itself. But the thing I want to talk when it comes to confidence is that like just general hesitation towards doing things because you are worried about the outcome. So the biggest thing for a lot of players, especially on the newer end, is that you have two distinct types of mentalities, especially on the new end, is that they're they're trying to avoid death because they feel like death is the bad thing. So they avoid that, and the way that they avoid that is by not fighting people and not fighting people. If you're not playing a caster, if you're playing some like assassin or that, like you don't have the equipment to do anything else, like you're gonna put yourself in a situation where you're not doing anything. You're not able to accomplish anything. Uh, Someone's gonna walk into you, like you're gonna take a bad trade because you're new, and like you have all these advantages in the world when it comes to actual like raw skill, and you're gonna get the same outcome. I'm gonna say it's maybe a little bit better because the same way that like we talked about distance and posturing and stuff. Like you being there is still a positive for your team, but your impact is basically minimized because of the lack of confidence in your ability to play the game. And like I can only really say that you need to find ways to break through that. You need to either force trades or whatever, because especially because if you're not playing the game, you're not doing the things in the game that make you better at the game. So it's going to take longer for you to get better at the game. So you're going to be stuck in that position for a very long time until you make an adjustment to your class, what you loadout you use and stuff like that. Um, in a similar vein, hesitance towards casting is a lot of people get stuck when they see the wizard that casts like a billion spells as fast as they can on any person that walks into range, and that's scary when you don't really know what's going
Yeah.
on. But you have to understand that that person can only do so much, and there are timing windows. And if you force something out of them, like they can't keep casting. You
Yeah.
know?
The other thing is like, especially like on a wizard, for example, who's casting multiple spells super fast, they can only give their attention to one person at a time, essentially, unless they have like,
Yep.
something big,
Yeah.
like big
I
spell
mean,
balls and they're playing
yeah. If
spell
two
ball.
people run at them at the same time, they have to use something that isn't the magic they're casting at you.
Yeah.
Make the ambulance and try to space it out and hope that their team is there. But like, I mean, it's a losing fight for them if they're on their own. And if you take space while they're casting at you and they have to ambulate backpedal, and then you have like projectiles and stuff, you can punish them because they can only cast them with you.
And that kind of goes back to the first thing we talked about earlier. Like, if you can force things out of your enemy, even if
Yeah, I
you're
mean, if
gonna
the
lose.
wizard wants to cast at every person they see, like if it's not like a 5v5 or something where you're gonna get instantly snowballed because it's like a CTF, something like that. Like if you can get away with it, just make them cast on you. If you're not the strongest player in the field, like having them cast at you repeatedly is gonna wipe them out of resources. There's lots of stuff that's per life,
Yeah.
but not everything is per life, and
And if
they
you're
also have to die at some point to get back.
Yeah, and if you're ultimately forcing abilities out of them for just a single death, especially for, let's say your whole team is level sixes and you have like one brand new player, they're only level one, it's like their first day out, you know, while they may not think they're making a big impact, if they're forcing out like one of their casters, if they're forcing out every ability they have, that player's like resource level, even if they're just gonna die, respawn, die, respawn, die, respawn. But every time they force out an ability, that's one less that your team has to go in as a big against, and
Yeah.
it's just you're lowering them down over time. You're just breaking it down.
Yeah, and if you can, game what their list is, if you can make a read on what type of stuff they take, or if you just happen to know because you play with them enough or you've seen it, like you
Big
can
advantage.
you can you can literally just pay attention to what they use and what they have, and then start abusing them when the wizard runs out of icy blast and the only thing he has left is shoves and hold person, and you're someone that has a release, like that's only so scary. Like you could take 10 feet of space on them when they finish their cast, and then just instantly release yourself and then continue taking space. Like they're gonna be forced to disengage, or they're gonna get punished for it. Um, yeah, I mean, you gotta learn that trading can be a positive thing, especially if you're one of the weaker players in the field. Especially like if there's significant margins in skill, like you're pretty much always gonna be gaining a positive if you find a better player that you can take advantage of and abuse. If you force them to do stuff to you, or if you force them to put their attention on you, like that's opening up space for your team. And if you manage to get hits or anything like that on your you've made a very positive trade for yourself and
Um,
your team.
Another thing, kind of related. It's semi-related. One thing, and this is kind of something we do in like in Overwatch, for example. I'll use that one. Where we have an Amtgard, we have stuns and stuff, right? Like if you can get an abeyance off, or like an actual stun or something, an ice ball, something where that character, that player is, they're stuck for the next 30 seconds. A really hard habit and thing that I've seen a lot of people do, it's just instinctual. As soon as you get them, you want to take advantage of and kill it, right? That's your natural instinct, is to get them off the field. Instead of doing that, you want to stagger that stuff out. Like if you can force a stun on somebody, right? And then you just leg them and then leave them. Now they're legged, they're going to be stunned there for 60 seconds. Force it out.
And
If
then you
you
can kill them
can
at 59.
Not even that.
if
Just
you're
like
if
if it's a really high player and like there's nobody around that's gonna be able to help them, let them be. If they're now legged, they're stunned for 6 seconds. That gives you 60 seconds of play time. Then when they get out of that, they're already gonna be crippled, like where they can't do anything. That's like their abilities now just gonna be dead. Or even like if you have a wizard who can pyrotechnic or heat weapon on a monk, right? Don't kill the monk. The monk can't do anything now at this point. They have no weapon. They have no abilities, no gear. You know, just let them be. They're now just they're useless at that point. It's not always about killing enemies or like taking a player off the field. Sometimes it's literally just staggering them to where they can't play even though they're alive. Do stuff
yeah
that it wrecks them, because like if you were to kill them, their equipment's gonna come back. Break a shield, but don't finish off the player. Break the shield, leg them, leave them there. If you can break the weapon on top of that, that player is kind of useless. At some point, they're just gonna have to give up and take they're gonna have to take their own
they're gonna
death.
have to use resources, or they're gonna have to take a death,
Yeah,
which is
and
more
then
time that they lose.
exactly, you're using more of their time than you killing them, and it's such a natural instinct to want to just you stun a player, instantly kill him, right? That's like you just want to do it. But get in
Yeah,
the
make the
habit
player
of
make the
stagger
player
that.
force you to do something. Take
Yeah, the
them to
longer you
initiative.
can
Like if you
stagger
can make them
somebody.
useless, then whatever. But if they're some some like sword and board that's on their leg and they want to crawl at you, like,
Let
sure.
them.
I mean, just like
Just
kill them if
backpedal.
you
Let them
have
go.
to. That's it. You're just wasting time. Like they're more impactful if they're doing literally anything else. So
And
you're not
unlike,
being.
in real life versus like video games and stuff too, right? Like if you make somebody like you leg them and they're gonna sword and board and charge after you, they're gonna use so much of their like personal energy where like in a video game, there is no such thing as energy. You could run forever. In real life, that person's gonna get tired out. They're not gonna want to do it again, and they're gonna
Yeah, if you
rethink
like
their
them enough,
approach
then
next
their
time.
knees start to hurt unless they're wearing knee pads. Most people don't. Most
But
people
it's
get
not
lazy
even,
and they don't
yeah,
wear
it's not even
stuff.
like the knee pad thing though. It's literally like your energy. Like a lot of people don't have that cardio level to keep doing that all day. Eventually,
Yeah.
they're gonna give up, or they're gonna rethink how they're coming at you because they just know it's gonna come
Or you
again.
just get them worked up and they start to sweat and then their performance declines like a little
Exactly.
bit. Even if it's like 5%, like it's still that's still a benefit.
And then like on top of like staggering and stuff, right? Like there's an appropriate time to stagger somebody and like kill them off the field. If you team wipe an enemy team and they have one or two people left, stun those two people, right? Like, leg them, stun them, whatever you can do. And then right as their team starts coming alive, then you kill those last two players. That now puts that next team fight, you guys already have a two people advantage. So kind of be smart about when you kill people and like when you use your resources to do that kind of stuff because you can make a fight easier by dragging it out in your favor and you can kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean the next step we're going to get into is resource management abilities, and we're going to talk more about that
Too late, we're
while
already
we
in
close
there.
out. Yeah, I mean while we close out confidence is the biggest thing about confidence is if you realize that you have hesitation or whatever, the biggest thing is to make adjustments in your play. Like when I started this game, I played in 7.7 where everyone had lives. Like dying was always really bad because every game shadow battle at some point. And I had to learn how to, play the game without dying, and still get things done. Otherwise, you were you weren't going to accomplish anything on the field. So I played Barbarian to start, and I had Berserk, so I basically lycanthropy, and I eventually switched to Druid, which I only did because I wasn't gonna play Wizard because someone else that I was friends with was playing Wizard. It happened to work out, and then I learned that I could give myself more armor and stuff like that through that, and I broke through the barrier of not being confident in melee because I knew that I had armor and that was an advantage that I could always exploit. So I didn't have to worry about going to melee. I still had to be smart, but I had that option pretty much any time I saw someone. And you know the biggest thing is making adjustments to your play so that you don't get stuck in this series of not doing anything or worrying about the outcome, so you don't accomplish very much in the game. Anyway, that's it on that. The next one is resource management and ability usage. So we were just talking about it, so I guess we'll continue talking about it.
Hell yeah.
Using abilities to accomplish a variety of things. It probably has the most complexity as far as the game goes, but most of the concepts are very simple. Like use your abilities when, to snowball. Like, try to be efficient with what you're using.
Yeah, and at the same time, like it's the same thing. Your resource management is
There are resources
there's
that are infinite, like weapons and stuff. And
yeah.
if you go down the line of what can you get away with, weapons are in most cases the most difficult thing to hit people with, unless you try really hard or they make mistakes. And then you go down the line, like what's the next thing? You got projectiles and stuff. It's reusable, but you have to go get it or whatever afterwards. And then
Um,
the next best thing is magic, which you cast at a range, and as long as they're in the range, it's guaranteed.
it's kind of the same thing. Like,
But
don't
it's more
use your
limited.
abilities when you don't have to. Like, I mean, like there's points where you just want to flex on somebody and you just want to, you just want to have your moment. But like for example, like if a player's legged and they're injured already, they don't they only have like a short sword, their shield's broken and whatnot. Don't go out using like your per life or your per refresh abilities.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
like
maybe it depends on the situation.
that's what I'm
Like
saying.
maybe
Like if you
shoving them is maybe beneficial.
yeah, at that point
Like
that's
using
one thing.
something
But
like
like
using
don't
a
use
very small
as a healer, like don't use
resource
your stun, for example.
that
You know.
requires them to retake space. Um,
Yeah,
but another thing on that same line is that when you have that team scenario where you're wipe the team or whatever, like um, it's depending on the game type. If it's something where you can win off the spot, like a CTF or something, like fine, you're in their base, like start using all your magic or whatever. Depending on if it's round based, stuff like that. You have to use your brain for these situations either way. Like if you use like 3 or 4 abilities or a large amount of abilities, just so you can snowball, that's potentially like valuable enough that you should do so, rather than forcing staggers and stuff like that. Like you use like
yeah. Like
your
if,
hold
for
person
example,
on a
like if you're
scout or
playing
something, and then you
barbarian,
try to play.
if instead of using like where you're playing barbarian, right? Like if you have fight after death, don't waste it on like 2 or 3 people if you know there's a big team fight coming up and you can ultimately push 10 plus people with your fight after death. Even if you get no value at it, that 10 people they're going to scatter. I don't know anybody
Yeah,
who's really going to want to challenge that because
yeah. I
the
mean,
odds
you're
are just
shield
definitely not in your
crushing
favor.
and stuff
Yeah, and
like
they're
that,
like
and
practically invincible for the most part.
most people, the vast majority of people can't just straight block shots repeatedly without eventually getting hit. Especially as they don't have to worry about anything, so they can just continuously gap close. And at some point, they have so much shot option on you that you can't realistically block them anymore. Um, but yeah, I mean, you gotta gauge when you can snowball, and that's a big thing, especially on the average fields. The average field is not a lot of um, so there's always opportunity to snowball, and that's just sometimes it's as easy as hitting an icy blast or just like pinning arrowing someone and then having someone run at them and then just unloading whatever you can at the time. But you
Yeah,
can also like turbo lose yourself the game if you use all your resources because
exactly.
you think you're gonna force a snowball, but then you can't, and then you're just out of like the important stuff, and the stuff you have isn't impactful enough anymore.
Yeah, know when to peel with that too. Like if you're in a battle, you guys are at advantage at first. You guys are taking numbers, things like that, and you're using abilities, and all of a sudden it starts shifting to your enemy's favor. If you know you're gonna lose, stop using your abilities if they're like unless they're like stuff you can get back. Don't waste your time. Don't waste the effort. Don't waste something that you're not gonna get back if you're ultimately just gonna lose that fight anyways. Make that it's ultimately it's going to take time to learn that kind of judgment and things like that. Some people pick up on it real easily. Some people just don't care, and I mean that's fine too. Like if that's your play style and you're just there to have fun, like there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. But like if you're looking to get better, like know when, like know when to just let go, know when to
Yeah,
back out. Say we lost this. Hey, regroup, whatever you got to do. Don't let them stagger you, snowball you, and then ultimately just waste your resources while they're getting free like economy out of it.
yeah, um, yeah. So the same vein, like you're try to find ways to get value with less more reusable stuff first, and you go down the list of basically like this is the most valuable thing you have. Like sixth level magic is sixth level magic for a reason. Like I take 3 call lightnings on most every list, but do I use them in most games? No, because realistically I don't have to. Even if I'm super serious about a game. But there are times when, like, if you just want to snowball right away, you hit, your icy blast, and then you push someone in melee, and then you ambulate call it lightning 2 people. You know, I had a game. I don't know if you're there for that. You remember Frederick's modular battle, the one we had at the kingdom, where it was like 5 sections?
Oh, yeah, it was essentially Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah. So in that game, as you push through their gates or whatever, there's like 5 sections of field, and you can throw and shoot and stuff over it, but you can't melee. Or no, you could melee. You just can't walk it. Something like that. Something like that. And
Yeah, you
but
could.
there's
There
gates
were
that you
like,
could have to. There are like 2 sides you have to break it and walk through. There's like
Yep.
2 that are open for you, and then I think their team has to open it for them at some point. And then but as you break through their gates, your respawn timer goes up. So at some point you have a really long timer, and we got to the very end of this game where we got snowballed and I died at some point. Then I held my respawn for like 8 seconds or so, or 10 seconds, while I waited for a particular other person to spawn. They were on the objective. There's like an incantation count they had to do on the objective. And so I waited to spawn. I call lightning the person on it. We got enough ground. We snowballed. They had to retreat to their side, and then I call lightning more people than that. And then there's no way to respawn because the timers are so long. I literally held it to like the last 10 seconds of the game.
yeah, and that's a big thing that kind of ties in with like, fighting, and this is like another one of those things where like esports kind of converts over. It's okay to give up, like a certain point or like a tick or, like a flag or some kind of control
Yeah,
if it means not staggering
yeah.
longer. Like if you have one person there,
I'm pretty sure I stopped Peaches at like 8 or 9 on like a 10 count or something like that when
yeah, and
I
that's my point.
spawned
Is
and done
like
that. Like
if
I
you can
I
wait it
kept
out
it super
longer.
close.
But if, like, say for example, like you went in, right, and you lost that fight because you went in solo, and now there's nobody else to push that, and he gets that free 10. That's ultimately like you gotta be more situational of, do I go in and try to stagger it, or do I wait for my team and not give up the penalty of
Yeah,
me
that's
not being
also a
there for the
thing.
next team fight?
You are allowed to wait to spawn, by the way. I don't know if anyone tells you different. Like that, you don't have to spawn when your counter is up, unless the game designer decides that's the rule. You are allowed to wait, and sometimes it's useful. There are cases like that.
Even then, just like even if you have to spawn, just sit there at base. No, 9 out of 10 times
Yeah,
people aren't gonna
they were
push
like
you.
10 feet ahead in front of us, so
Yeah.
there was like a I kind of in that situation. But yeah, you have to be able to gauge the value of your abilities, and sometimes there are very, very important moments where if you didn't hold something, you'll lose the game.
It's not even
That's
always
one of those
abilities.
rare.
Like it could just be a life.
Yeah,
Like how value is that life? Do I go in by myself to stall for 3 seconds and then my team can't make it, or do I just wait 3 seconds? We go in as a team and we team wipe them. Like you got to make those smart plays.
yeah. So we talked about off angling before, but I didn't really talk about this part of off angling. Is one facet that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to off angling is that you can use off angling. I don't know explained off angling. Basically, instead of like the front, off angle is an angle that's separate from whatever the normal is. That it gives you value, or you're able to accomplish something you weren't able to otherwise. Normally it's a flank. It's terminology in different games and stuff like that. But pretty much the idea is you take a flank, you go to the side of something, you play a less common angle. But you can use that when it comes to projectiles and stuff. And this is more important with like high value resource. We got one of like a sphere of annihilation or like a phased arrow. You know, if you take an angle, right, like to the side, and you shoot through the enemy team, like,
Yeah.
or as opposed to it going through the enemy team and landing like 50 feet in their team, you can make it land like 10 to 20 feet in their team on a side that's easy to retrieve. And if you take any space, get that back for free rather than having to have someone pick it up for you, or force ability usage, and stuff like that. And that's really important, especially if you're one of your main sources of value is if you're playing a low level caster or something and you have only ice balls and entangles. Like that's your value. So you want to try to you're playing center, you can throw off an egg, you can throw towards a corner, so you're throwing center to right, you know, and then if you miss or if you hit something, it lands past them, you know, on their flank where you can then go get it again.
Yeah, kind of like a on top of like playing on like angles and stuff like that. Like the more weird angles you play, like especially when they're not like super obvious or like say you're playing at like a kingdom level quest or something, right? Or a kingdom level battle game, and you're out in the woods. If you're playing at like these weird off angles, especially like out in the woods and stuff like that, where people they know you're there, but like they're not half paying attention because it's such a weird
Yeah,
thing.
not everyone wants to trot through like bushes,
Yeah,
like all
like
this other weird stuff. Like there's
no
branches
one's
in the
gonna pay
way.
attention, right? So like no one's gonna pay attention for the most part because it's you're kind of in this place where they're not used to, so their brains aren't really thinking about it. The
I
second thing
love
is
forest
is
battles. There's so many things I get to
yeah,
do that
you
I get
take
don't
so
get
much
ever do
cover
otherwise.
and a bunch of stuff. And then like on top of that, like now that you're like in such an off angle, you know, especially if you're in like the woods or something, is the team, are they going to take that chance to push you when you could just get away for free, or are they going to waste their effort to try to push into that? So like using
Yeah, and
weird
sometimes
and like
depending on where you set
off
up
covers and
too.
stuff, yeah. Weird things like that can pay off huge for small
Yeah,
movements and big
you know,
turnovers.
there's like a tree of trees or something. There's like 3 trees here, and then there's like a bush, and then there's some like shrubbery, and then you're like a little bit past that, you know. Like you have like a clearing behind you. Like they can't approach you. Your the space that you can break is
Yeah.
faster and more efficient than the space that they have to get to you. So you know,
And
like
like
it's
it sounds like such a really, simple thing and like such a common thing for people to think of, but if you watch people on field, they don't, they'll, most people don't play the angles, they look you dead in the face and they go straight towards you, and it's like I said at the beginning, it's people go, forward and backwards, left and right. There's not much of like, those 45s or like those weird angles or like the off positioning over here. It's people very much will play just vertically, and horizontally, and like that's it. And if you watch people, like it is super common that that's all people do.
yeah. Even if you get to like average or better players, is they have very static ways that they play that aren't necessarily uh great or anything like that. And you know, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do to abuse that. So back to the projectiles and off-angling thing. You know, when your whole thing is trying to get value out of resources, if you can convince players or Reeves to pick up your shit for you, that's a big deal. There's like one of the jobs of a Reeves is pick up gear and stuff off the field. Sometimes it can hurt you depending on what you're doing. Like if you're playing an assassin or if you're like a monk and you're trying to get like weird sanctuary kills and stuff like that, like you know, them picking up your stuff is potentially a negative, you know. And you're also completely allowed to pick up your own stuff, which is substantial. Not everyone knows that.
You just find you just belt somebody, and then you have them not play. They play like a non-com, and they just follow you around for the whole game and just hand you gear.
Yeah, I mean, say if you
Don't
can
actually do
convince
that.
Reeves to grab your stuff for you, that's a big deal. Like, hey, can you put that Spear of Annihilation over there for me? Like, and then you know, you get your ability back that you otherwise had to,
Don't
you know,
abuse
you had
that.
to. If they're gonna do it, that's fine.
Oh, I mean,
That's
like,
completely
yeah,
within
I'm
the
not gonna
rules.
ask. Like, I'm not the person who will ask. But if like I happen to walk by and a Reeve's like, hey,
If
this
it's a
is yours,
really
and I'm like, oh, hey,
serious game,
thanks.
do what you gotta do. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
I don't
100%.
know that I would ever do it, but like, if you're here to win, you're there to win.
Like,
You know,
as a Reeve, the only thing
if
I
it's
would generally
behind their
pick up,
team,
like as a Reeve, the only thing I would generally pick up would be like arrows, just because I don't want people to step on that kind of stuff. But like spell balls, I'm leaving them there. Good luck. You guys go find them. You threw them, you go get them. I'm picking up your arrows because I don't want them to break, and I don't want somebody to get hit with a broken arrow. That's about it.
yeah. Um, Casting as a form of pressure, but not expending uses. You know that one of the big things that casters do a lot of the times is they'll cast to you, but they don't intend to finish because they don't really want to use their magic. You know, it is a resource. Whether or not they're casting something threatening, like you find people that will always, you know, either their instincts are to back up. You know, you get test the waters with everyone to see how they play. But if you find people that their instinct is to back up and they never challenge you when you're casting magic, just repeatedly cast magic on them whenever you see them do something, and then just don't finish it. You know, and then they'll back up, and then they'll either go somewhere else or they'll just sit there for the entire game not doing anything. And with that same thing we talked about with the confidence thing, is a lot of players have a tough time figuring out how to challenge Magic. So if you take space and then you just sit there and you start casting, at everything in sight, people oftentimes respect that. Even at like mid levels play, people will over respect that fact that you're trying to cast Magic on them, and they will basically halt, and you'll get a ton of opportunity to take control of the game.
Yeah, it's how much effort do I want to put into this with a 50-50 chance of me dying or you dying? Do I want to put in a bunch of effort just to die, or do I want to just sit there and neither of us do anything?
Yeah, that's one of those things that make people that play dedicated casters like Wizard and stuff or Bard seem like crazy players. Is the biggest factor in that is the general unwillingness to try to contest you, because um, people just don't really understand that you have to challenge it, or they're just going to keep doing it. And then they get a lot of value. They get a lot of value just sitting in the field, repeat casting Magic. At some point, they start hitting stuff that they want to on the people that they want to, and then they get to snowball because people won't challenge them, and they're also reducing their threat as they finish Magic out. Games with long-term win conditions are kind of a hard one to judge. Even for insane players, it's really hard to guess how a game is going to go when it lasts 20 minutes and there's maybe a less definitive win con, like domination or something like that, where you can kind of keep track of it, but it's possible for you to lose enough control over the game that you can't necessarily maintain it. And especially when you're worrying about how much resources you're expending throughout, because you know that the game is going to go long term, and at some point you're going to be really weak because you're out of abilities. And I mean, it's you just got to try to judge it as best as you can, or pace how you do stuff. Per lives exist for a reason. If you make it a point going long term that that you can trade your lives in for more opportunities at affecting the game, you should probably do so. Just casting per lives, making a trade, dying, getting your per lives back, and then at the intervals that are gonna matter, or when you're in a bad position or whatever, you commit more resources or more important resources to snowballing the game in your favor.
Yeah, if there's like say for example, I played games where there's a timer, and if at the end of a certain point in the timer, you get your refresh and abilities back. Like if you know that timer's coming up and you have a bunch of
Yeah,
your abilities, just burn them. Burn all your abilities that you have if you know you're just gonna get them back. There's no point not to. If you don't, then you wasted that first half just kind of sitting on those abilities that you could have burned. Even if you don't get far with it, take advantage of it.
yeah. I mean, this is what I say. You gotta pace yourself. If you have resources, ideally you want to use them by the end of the game. Anything you're sitting on, anything you haven't used
Waste
is,
opportunity.
yeah, you've wasted an opportunity,
There are
basically.
times where you don't
If
need
the
to,
game
for
is
example.
ending, yeah,
But good rule of thumb is, at the end of a game, you should be very near to no abilities left or spells left, or you should have absolutely none left. You should be pretty close to that on an average game, unless you're just complete field wiping, by normal means. Then you don't need to use them. But say teams are pretty even at the end of that game, you should be almost either all the way dead with abilities or have no abilities left at all.
yeah. So I mean, the concept here is if the game is ending and you haven't used something, you haven't gotten value out of it. Pretty much, it's like any other game. You have an ultimate or whatever. If you're about to lose, and you don't use your ultimate, like, you haven't accomplished anything. You just use it, even if it's not very valuable, you still used it, and then it was your only chance. We talked about the traps of casting at anything and everything. Like sometimes it has moments where it's good. Um, if people respect it enough. But if you just wipe yourself out of ability, it's not very good. The only people that can really accomplish that are like dedicated wizards or dedicated bards, and they just sit there and just cast. Especially bards because they get like a billion lives compared to everything else. Um, there's definitely opportunities in the game where it will be bad. And that's as far as I have for the main section of topics. I have a couple of small things to go over. Um, I had a loose discussion on like the separation between like skill levels and stuff. Um, I think game sense and positioning is the two that make the biggest impact on stuff because like game sense includes like 70% of what we've talked about before, and if you have a very strong knowledge basis for the game and stuff, like that's going to translate to literally everything you do. There's really no case where that's a bad thing. And positioning is, it's contextual, but it's the determining factor on whether or not you're able to accomplish basically anything. If fighting other stuff, like a baseline for fighting is the most important thing. If like even if you hate it, like you should do line battles or like look up videos like once or twice in your life just so you understand some line concepts because they apply very directly. Do a lot of Amtgard battle gaming, even though it's not necessarily you're not gonna get it like in every game situation where like or you constantly get to abuse the way lines work and stuff. But it has a lot of impact because most of the concepts for combat operate on the same like pretense that playing a class game. There's just more complexity because there's abilities and stuff added in. So, the next one, safe play and finding objective advantages. This is a very important part of the game if you want to try to optimize your ability to play the game without getting punished ever. There's a couple very simple things that I think every player should kind of understand, and a lot of this is my opinion on what is and what isn't safe. Um, but the first thing is range and weapon choices. Let's just say armor. I have it on a different tab, but armor, the average field has little to no armor. That's fine.
If someone's
People
out
don't
there
want to get it.
balling with money.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like even a little bit makes a huge difference. Like, but when no one has armor, think about it like this. If you go into a 1v1 melee or whatever, that you take a skirmish on a side or any other number of things that could happen. It's gonna be your fighting skill versus theirs. If you can't, there isn't, if you don't have a very distinct like advantage as a player, like you're either way, like I'd say fighting skill versus fighting skill is always percentage. Like you're gonna lose a certain amount of time based on how good or bad you are versus them. Um, and I don't like that. Play battle games. I don't want to take like a 1v1. I don't want to take I have a 20% chance to lose to some newer player because I went into a trade. I want to take advantage of stuff that's objectively going to get me value, and I think like
It's kind of
if you're
like,
using a sword,
yeah, it's like rock paper scissors. Like, pole arm's gonna beat single short, and then like,
it's not even that. Like
not
I would
just
say
as an
a
example though,
pole
but like,
arm, yeah, I would say like a big thing like I wouldn't take a melee in that situation unless I had to. If I'm using anything, if I'm using short weapons of any kind, I'm not. I don't want to go into a fight with someone else that has that. I don't want to go into a fight with someone who has a pole arm. I want to avoid stuff like that as much as
Yeah,
I physically can. If
you
I
have
have a
to.
pole arm, I'm gonna try as hard as I can to avoid any shorter range because
You're gonna
having
get
a
singled
longer
out.
range, having a longer range is it's a removal of that risk factor. They physically have to close a certain amount of space or they can never hate, right? And
Yeah,
so
be
that's
smart
something
about
I
what you're challenging. That equipment can make a big difference.
yeah.
Like a bow is gonna be, unless it's like a monk, for example, but a bow is gonna be, most polearm people.
Yeah, if you only have swords and they shoot an arrow directly at your center, like you have to block it with a sword or you have to you have to do like the crazy juke of your life to get out of the way, you know. You're just losing a weapon
Yeah, and like let's
otherwise.
say like you're the most goated player of all time, you know, you still lose a sword out of that. You
Yeah.
block it, you still lose a sword no matter what. Unless you're a
Yeah.
monk, then you're SOL there.
Yeah, and then you're
And then
forced to either go back to your base,
or
because
yeah, either you're gonna try to chase that archer down
or you're
or you're
gonna or
gonna
someone on your team is gonna use resource on
exactly.
on your equipment, which is also a loss. I mean, either way, it takes time from you, uh, and you're in a bad spot.
It's
It's
like
a loss of value.
it's like Pokemon archetypes. This type beats this type, this type beats this type, this type
Yeah,
beats
I
this
mean,
type. In a
it's like I'll
ideally
be more
perfect
confident.
world, where everybody's skill level, for example, is like in a perfect scenario, everybody's skill level is exactly the same. You know, you need to pick what you're better at and what your equipment is better suited for. Are
Yep.
you, just a single short player who has no weight on them, you're most likely going to be, the objective person. You're going to be the flag runner. You're going to be things like that. Are you the shieldman? You're going to be in the front line. You're going to be defending. Are you in the bow? You're going to be the back line sniping, taking picks where you can.
Or you,
And then are you the pole? Are you the one breaking up in the shields? Are you the one, sweeping legs? Things like that.
yeah, I say if you have a speed pole, like either way, like
Yeah, everybody
you know,
has their own role. It's just, like you just gotta. It's situational, but like a lot of times it's gonna be very similar. Like for shields, for example, like almost always shields are gonna be in the front line. Like there's very rarely where I would want a shield in the back line, unless that shield is literally just to like stand in front of my archer, because I don't want my
yeah,
archer to get sniped from far
or
away.
you've gone against that assassin or whatever that likes to do the bow
Exactly.
snipe thing on the side, and then you realize that that passive defense is necessary because you're going to get hit or you're going to be forced from position. But what's a bow assassin going to do to your shield? It's not
Exactly.
like an archer where it has the raw destructive power where it can break your equipment or affect you in some way. What the assassin is able to accomplish with his shield is or this bow is hitting people that don't have protection from weird angles, you know. But if you
Yeah.
have the protection, it doesn't do anything.
And even if he's not getting a kill, like I said earlier, if he takes out a leg or an arm, that's either, you're at a disadvantage for your team or your team's going to have to use resources to fix that. Um, and ultimately, like, even if it's a healer who's just using heal, that's time that they have to take out of that just not to lose a person. So it adds up over time.
Yep. Yeah. Going back to that, like, if I have a shield, like maybe I'm willing to take skirmishes like a flow guy or something like that or another board, and we could just trade legs. Like realistically, I have to beat the person 1v or something, or I have to outplay a bunch of people in a line, um, or I'm dying for free, or I'm taking a poor trade or something like that. And I don't like doing stuff like that in games. I make it a point to like not abuse skill, because that's not I don't have the confidence to play like that. I don't want to just unless I'm playing really for real and I'm at like a kingdom level event, I'm not going to play like that. I'm going to play off of like what is a guarantee for me. Guarantees are the big thing. Uh, and I just like I'm either going to use range to my advantage or I'm going to use armor or something like that. armor is usually the biggest one, is you can very easily pick out who has less armor than you. And if
Yeah.
you go to 1v1 someone that has less armor than you, like even with like disadvantageous skill margins where you're like going up against a better player, that's such an advantage for you that it's really hard to lose that. And even if you like lose it, you can always disengage before the trade goes
Yeah.
too far in their favor.
And
You
like
know?
kind of related to armor, like one thing people don't realize when they go against people with armor, people will use armor as their crutch, and even if it's like a really good player who's good at blocking and stuff, a lot of times they'll give up the defense because they have that armor to put more offense in.
Yeah, they'll just
And you
focus.
can
Yeah,
use
that's
you
the
can
big
use
thing.
that as an advantage. Like if you have somebody who can keep them busy enough because they're not paying attention to keep their defense up, and you can use an ability or a spell, or you have somebody else who can get into that defense line because they're just putting so much focus into the offense that they're just letting the armor take it.
Yep.
Use that to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, and all it takes is just keep trading.
Exactly.
Eventually, they don't have the armor anymore. Like you can obviously lose way too much value doing something like that, but if you over time you try to abuse the fact they have armor and they're not necessarily focused on being defensive,
But yeah,
you
like
should
next
always
time
try
you
to block
go
before anything else, but
to
not
like a
doesn't
big
play
kingdom
people
level
play like
event or
that.
something, like next kingdom level event you go to, watch the people with armor, right? And watch how much more aggressive they fight than when they don't have armor, and how like less defense they put into it, because they like, and it's smart, like it has a big trade-off, right? That's the point of wearing armor, so you can be more offensive, you can soak more damage. But like
Yeah,
notice their normal playstyle, and then notice how much like more aggressive they get with less defense, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about, and you'll pick up on it.
yeah. That's the whole reason whenever I have armor, whenever I go like druid, I go flow for a reason because I have a defensive advantage, so I want to cash in on that by having more offense.
Exactly.
I use two swords because it gives me more opportunity to be offensive. You know, if I'm going against someone that's sword and board, they also have armor. Like I'm at an advantage because even though they have a passive defense that blocks hits, like I can force trades. I can force trades differently because I have more offensive option than you do. So going back to safe play, looking for advantages like numeric advantages are a big factor here. It's not necessarily a guarantee the same way that having a trade or whatever, but knowing that you have more people, knowing your posture be more aggressive is a big thing, and it is objectively an advantage in most cases to have more people. And with the introduction of class abilities and stuff that allow you to, you know, CC people, like CC can be used as forcing more of a numeric advantage because the player is limited in their abilities to do, so they can only uh, they can't um, they can't do as much. They You can also use harder CCs to just straight up them lose that person for a certain amount of time, and then you can use the time and space that you get from that to push advantages where you have more people, and that's kind of a line battle concept. But I like playing in those types of thinking where you're looking for advantages where you shouldn't lose unless there's a drastic skill margin or you get outplayed or something like that. Spacing, we kind of talked about spacing. Spacing, in the constant pole arms, if you're playing 10 feet away from someone and they have a short, they hit you, close a certain amount of space. But spacing also, works against projectiles, works against magic, it works against a factor of other things. I think that's really all I have to say about that until we get into specific stuff. I have a couple more topics and then we're done. So, different types of games and how they affect snowballing. Kind of talked about some stuff, but if we talked about the context of a CTF or something, you know, like big thing with CTF is all it takes is one person get into their base and then take their flag, and then like that's all you need to win. So if you're, let's say the average field is like a 50-50, like how much does it take for you to begin snowballing? Normal play, you have a bunch of people lined up on their field. Maybe one or two people engage, then someone dies, cast like a whole person on someone, and then you try to play aggressive on the flank. And at some point, a team will start losing, and uh, like in a game like that, all you need is one big advantage, and that's it. So that type of game, snowballing is usually the essential way to, unless someone gets really sneaky.
Yeah. In like a perfect world, it would theoretically work in bigger games as well. But the main reason it doesn't is you have a lot of people, like we went back earlier, where people are hesitant. You could have a group, say if it's like 100 on 100, right? You could have a group of like 20 people who are pushing in real heavily. They start to snowball, but you have like a big chunk of your backline that are really hesitant, or they're kind of, sitting back or stuff like that. And so they're not going to push. In a perfect world, your whole team's going to work in unison. They're going to work together at the same time. They're going to, be real instinctual on, when they need to move. But in reality, that's really not what's going to happen unless you guys make like a big plan for that. And so more often than not, the bigger games you get into, the harder it is to really snowball a team, unless you're
Yeah,
just like a huge skill gap.
yeah. The bigger the games get, um, I have a thing to talk about after this. The Shadow Battles, I don't think anyone plays this anymore. We used to. No, I used to see it,
Oh, we
but
actually just did last weekend.
people tend not to because Shadow Battles aren't so fun anymore. The game works. People play healers and stuff. No one really understands how they need to commit to backline, whatever, and then it doesn't
Yeah.
go anywhere.
They're
The game
also
lasts
not as
forever.
long as games. That's the other thing a lot of people don't like to play. Versus like a big capture the flag or like a big militia game or some kind of objective game. Shatter battles just they go too quick, and so
Yeah, they either
people
go too
ultimately.
fast or never end.
Yeah,
In between.
there's usually no in between. It's like kill your killer. Either this game's gonna last like 10 minutes and it's gonna be done, or this game's gonna last 3 hours and we're never gonna finish it.
Yep. I have a little thing about respawn timers and how respawn timers tend to affect games. As you go down more and more in the respawn, when you get to like 15 seconds, some people like to play 15 and 30. I think are the two that I see a lot. Maybe even more than 60 in some cases. Um, like the fact that people respawn quickly means that snowballing is very, very much less likely to happen because it takes a lot of teamwork or some exceptional scenario where a lot happens at once, and that doesn't usually happen in most games, to snowball, and people aren't going to be the time efficiently enough to snowball. So people are just going to respawn repeatedly until something, until you manage to take enough space or whatever. And it only gets reduced with higher counts. As you go up to like 60 or 30 seconds, like you're dead for 60 seconds. That's 60 seconds of that's a huge amount of time where people can just run at your team. There's nothing you can really do about it. Small timers make trades less effective. It's a big thing to know, depending on what you're playing. Small timers tend to favor casters a bit less because marshals can do whatever they want and they don't really have to worry about stuff.
Yeah, this is kind of like
Especially if your
where
game is.
it's kind of where I was talking about with like if you're playing a caster that can, freeze or, stun a person or hold them in place. That's like the lower timers. That's really big advantage for you instead of, ultimately just killing a player and getting them off the field. Stagger that out, make them wait that full minute. If they have to wait a minute and then you kill them and then they have to wait the 15 seconds, you get an extra minute out of it. So that's essentially 4 extra deaths. In like a perfect world and everything. Versus if you kill them, it's 15-second death. Obviously, they're gonna have to walk, so it's probably gonna be like closer to like 20 or 30 seconds, depending on how far they gotta walk and stuff like that. But when you got to use that caster ability, like you said, it does favor the martial classes, the fighting classes, advanced like archers, things like that, bow users. It heavily advantages over the caster classes, but if you're using your abilities the right way, you can either put it in your favor or at least equal out the what you have available to you.
Yeah. A lot of people for some reason think that making it so that you take a death because you took magic that's 4 times the death count. You should like be dead for that 60 seconds, and like I gotta say that's just not it, my man. Like what you should really do is you should reduce the timer on spells to match the death count, because you shouldn't overly punish people for having level 1 abilities being used on them. That's an opinion. That's you could do whatever you want in the game, I guess, but you're hurting a section of players much more than they need to be hurt in a game where you're otherwise trying to make things go fast, so things are fun, things are fast.
Yeah.
That's the small games tend to be grindier, because when people realize that they're only gonna be dead for a certain amount of time, they're more likely to just do stupid stuff, or just play the game to have fun, run in trades.
Yeah, it turns into who can use the most energy in a short amount of time.
Yeah, or who can capitalize more on small portions of advantage,
Yeah. That's where your assassins and all your players that are like really fast, lightweight characters who aren't carrying a bunch of equipment with them, no armor, who are really fast on their feet. That's where they shine the most. Like there are other games where they'll shine, but like that's your area. You get in, you get out, especially if it's an objective game. Those are gonna be your big players.
Yeah, plus some per lives are a lot stronger than others. I think poison is twice per life,
That's broken.
charge times 3. So if you're playing an assassin, you could very easily take quick trades, with a lot of value. Where you only have to hit like one thing. And then you all 3 of your escapes are per life as well. So you're literally just a recharge machine. So, yeah. The next thing I have is talking about close quarters games, and the types of approaches certain classes can have towards that. I have bridge battles, gates, and static points like King of the Hill. So, what are the advantages of playing a caster? Very grindy, like close quarters games, like a bridge battle. Uh,
Shove them.
yeah. Uh, that's how you get people upset. They gotta get all right. Back up. Gotta go through.
Yeah,
It's like
especially you're in a
20
crowded area
people.
and you shove the person that's in front, and now they gotta go 20 feet back through everybody. That's
Yeah,
gonna
and then their
piss some
whole
people
team
off.
moves. Yeah, well, it's also really good for your team when their whole team goes like this for a second,
Yeah,
and then they
especially
can't. Then
like
they
if
because
it's their
they're more narrowed by that, and then
yeah
you can just hit them. And then you know, but like
um
spell balls and stuff are like really good when there's just a blob of people that you can't miss. Um, but magic is only so effective because if you hit someone with like a hold person, uh, like they can either just get released or they're just gonna sit there anyway because that's what they were gonna do. So they just kind of like crouch for a little bit of time where they can't go anywhere. And then obviously if you freeze someone, they're just a wall that blocks shots and stuff. You know?
yeah.
Um,
If you really want to make
and
somebody mad, find the person on the field on the enemy team who has like the biggest armor set, the biggest shield, they have to carry the most weight, and then just shove them around.
yeah, play ping pong.
See how fast they want to take that armor off. You know, The best way to do it, what is it, agoraphobia, the one you have to stay away 50 feet? Is that
Oh
right?
my god.
You
Yep.
just you do that on
It's
them and
20
you
from
just
everyone.
chase
Yeah.
them. They have to stay 50 feet away from you, and then you just chase them. They have
It's
to.
it's
They literally
20
have to
from
go.
every person.
Okay,
That's
but
what it
either way,
is.
like whatever it is, you cast it on them, and then you just run at
Terrify
them.
is 50, agoraphobia is
That's what
20
it
from
is. Yeah,
everyone.
it's terrify. But yeah, you cast Terrify on them. They now have to stay 50 feet away from you, and then you just follow them. You don't have to run. You just walk. They have to go away from you, and if you just chase them, they're just gonna keep moving, and like you're not carrying anything, so it's not gonna
Terror is
bother
a big
you.
one.
So you kind of fuck with people. It's how much can I inconvenience you by doing little to me? If I'm just taking a quick walk for, what is it, 30 seconds, then whatever, that's 30-second walk. But if you have 50 pounds of armor on and you have to keep moving, one, that sucks to be you. But two, you're now also, staying away from your team as well, and kind of you get a dual effect out of it. And it's just kind of how fast
Yeah,
can we make
yeah,
somebody take their armor off?
yeah. I'm gonna say like if you want to abuse armor use, the big thing is casting
Yeah,
awes and shoves. You try to force as much movement on them as you can because there is a level of physical conditioning that armor comes with. And if it's if it's a warm day or something like that,
yep,
you make
you're
them
gonna have a
sweat to
bad
death.
time.
That's they should there's things that they should have done differently, I guess. Um, if you're playing a close quarter bridge battle or something like that, like magic is only going to be impactful in certain
Yeah, up to a
cases.
certain point, and then even then, like it'll have like a good strong lead at the beginning, but 5 minutes in, if their casters used up all their abilities and it's a close quarter, well, who has the advantage now? They have
Yeah, I
nothing
mean
else to use.
you can't melee. Like that's one of those
Yeah,
things.
you
Like
you're
there's
SOL.
like we talked about safe play before, but like if you're playing a caster and then there's like two people or three people in armor and then there's like a line of like six people and then there's like a million people behind them, like you can't go into that.
Yeah,
Like
you're kind of
you're
fucked.
just gonna die and that's it. Like even if you're a god gamer, like it takes a lot to beat like 20 time, and your class is just built for that.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
the average person, like I don't care who they are, your reflexes just aren't built that way. You're
Yeah.
when you're in the middle of it, like you could think about it now and you could probably like imagine yourself doing it, but putting yourself in your shoes, between like
You can
your brain
physically
freezing,
many swords at once.
yeah, like your brain freezing up and then like your actual reflexes, you would just die so quick. It's not a
Yeah.
feasible situation.
Gates it's kind of the same thing. You have like the space to take, and like you can throw balls and stuff, but your impact is gonna be so much. Uh, the biggest thing you can do is try to like halt other casters, try to punish their backline because the only thing you really have is a range advantage that bypasses the space that all the people are in. You know, um, so marshals are like the opposite of that, where you have to just find ways to edge yourself in combat. Unless you're like a barbarian or something, you could just like scatter the line, or they just have to stand there and take a bunch of hits until your timer runs out.
Or
Um,
unless you're just like real sneaky and can get behind them without anybody noticing, then
yeah,
go at it.
like if you want to play assassin, you want to teleport through them. Like
So like
I,
I'm gonna use an
people,
example.
people have to like they don't necessarily have to for a blink, but if you're forced to go somewhere like a teleport, like you're gonna make like that's it. Like you teleport through them, and
Um,
they want to use stuff to get you out of it. That's on them.
so
You
I'm
know.
gonna use an example kind of related. So like this is Keep 2017. We have this big battle game going on, and it's a real narrow point, and there's like two fields that open up, but they're blocked by bushes and trees and whatnot. So to get to the other 2 points, you have to go through this one narrow passageway. It's probably like 15, maybe 20 feet wide, but you're not talking like a 20 on 20 battle. You're talking like a 2 300 on 2 300 teams, right? So you have these massive gaps. 20 feet isn't anything. Um, for example, like if you can get behind them, I walked all the way around, walked through the woods, walked all the way through the next set of woods, and then came all the way back. it took like 20 minutes for me to get there, but by the time I did, I got behind the enemy lines, and they weren't expecting someone to take 20 minutes to walk behind them, and especially not through the woods. I got through them, and I literally just backstabbed 50 people before somebody finally turned around and just was like, "Hey, I had armor. Hit, hit." Like no one's paying attention. If you could capitalize on silly things like that, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, in a game
50
that big,
players
like
for like
there's
one death,
no
like that's
snowballing.
huge.
Like if you can get an advantage like that, like go for it. That's it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if you're playing close quarters with a like melee class, you just gotta get in the grind. Like some classes are distinctly better than others. Barbarians, you get to punish armor. It only takes a certain amount of hits for you to break him. Then that person's vulnerable. Like that's something you're looking to abuse. You know, only a couple classes have enough armor to sit in a grind, and all but like 3 of them don't have enough armor to take like several hits from Barbarian. Um, warriors warriors are strong, obviously, for obvious reasons. If you take a billion hits in a line, you can just push forward whatever you want to do and die. And scouts can play like a position that no one else can in that position, where you're at threat of getting stabbed by a billion things, pole arms, getting stuff tossed at you. Like as a scout, you have 3 points of armor you can work with theoretically, and you have abilities that only squishy people get otherwise. So you can do stuff for your line that no one else can do, like heal, and stuff like that. Release to get people, out of CC that's you think is bad enough or whatever. And then, assassin bypass stuff and then be annoying, get in backline, and then like force people to rotate or get really spooked that you're behind them and stuff like that. And there's a lot of different stuff that can generate. That's the martial game. Is close quarter stuff. Is you just want to get at it. We should talk about backlining in general. I think I didn't really put a thing for it, but there is a lot of nuance to backlining, how people deal with that. So I don't have anything prepped in my head, but everyone knows that there's a certain set of classes that tend to be in the back. Healer is the huge one. Wizards tend to play forward-ish, but not necessarily all the way forward. And
Play
then
a lot of
there's like
midline.
archers and stuff. Yeah, and then there's archers and stuff. And like in a lot of cases, you're limited by what's in the space that's in front of you. People have a really hard time figuring out how they're going to do anything in the back line if it's not shoot arrows at it or something like that. And like it really comes down to is you have to either force space or you have to, use movement abilities that bypass the space in front of you so you can bully them, like through teleport or whatever. If you're, several casters get teleport and assassins also get teleport. You don't have to use those on yourself. Well, the assassin one does, but everyone else doesn't. And you can use those abilities to send people to the back line just as a way to stop healers and stuff from doing whatever they want. And that's very important. Or if you just have enough field space that you can run around everything, I actually suggest doing it in that case. Bring out the newbie powers and just go take the biggest flank of your life. Because, if you're in a shadow battle and you can't get to their backline healers, there's no winning it. There's just genuinely no winning it. You have to find a way to get value on that, and that's it. That's it. I mean, healers in general are valuable in most games. Obviously, they're less valuable. Res bots are less valuable as death timers go down, but in the average game, it's useful enough that you should probably try to do something about it. But you have to be willing. You have to convince people that can to do so, and that unless you're playing the class that can do it yourself, uh, I really suggest you just try as hard as you can to talk someone into playing that way, because that's important. Even if they die for it, as long as they're taking time away from them or whatever. It's space and time that you can use to your advantage. Especially, this is the big thing is you're at like a Kingdom level event or whatever, get like all the assassins on your team together. Get like the squad, get like 5 of them, be like, all right, all of you are gonna teleport to the back line at the same time. And you just run, you know? Like that's like what it's like gonna be like the 2 or 3 healers and then depending on how big the game is and stuff. Say it's like several healers and then whoever's spawning at the time, and then maybe like a random bard. If you just have a whole bunch of people committed to running in to challenge that, like you're probably gonna win that act. Like healers aren't necessarily built to put up with that. If they try to cast magic on you, you have abilities that can outplay that. You have poisons that can make the trade, make trades just instant win in your favor. And I really suggest that to anyone that feels like healers or whatnot in the back line are a big deal, and you can apply the same concept to people that are just shooting arrows and stuff. Like what's an archer really gonna do to you? They're gonna like pinning arrow or something. Just gonna they're gonna shoot a weapon out of your hand. Meanwhile, you can run around the field around them while they're trying to do something about that, and you also have your projectiles that you can throw at them. And if any of them hit their bow, then they're fucked. That's it. You know. And you try to avoid giving people the freedom to do whatever they want. Even if they're in the back line and they're seemingly hard to contest, you should find someone, or you should be the one to test them if you're able. And then the only thing I have left to really talk about is difference between local and kingdom. And the biggest things are kingdom games. There's more people, means there's more opportunities. While it's harder to snowball in a bigger game, there is more people, and there's usually more space between people, and there's more opportunities to exploit. As you play the game and you get better at it, you'll notice more opportunities. Uh, at bigger games making getting the back line harder contest because there's such a concentration of people that it's there's more by comparison as well. More difficult to do that, and uh, just be aggressive. Being aggressive in Kingdom level games, like because it's harder to snowball, you're able to trade more. Like you're gonna get less punished by stuff because you're trading. You know, it's the same concept as any other game. If you're hesitant, you're not getting done. But if you're aggressive in a game where it's less likely for you to snowball, like you're not really losing anything, depending on the situation. That's all I really have to say about that right now. You have anything to say?
Um, I think Kingdom games a lot of people kind of psych themselves out of.
Yeah.
Either you get people who are just like they're goated and they perform super well, or you get like a player who's really good at a local field. They just they get to a Kingdom level event and they choke, and they kind of freeze up and they're not performing at like peak or what they normally would perform at. And that's something that people just have to work on ultimately. Like if you notice that you're not performing the same way you would at a level or like a duchy or like a local level field or anything like that, reevaluate why are you psyching yourself out? Are you not confident? Is it too overwhelming? Take a step back and reevaluate what you can do to fix that. Because ultimately, like if you're capitalizing at big kingdom level events, it'll show, and you'll be the big game changer. You'll be the person who's running field. Um, you'll be that first pick when they come to pick teams and things like that. Like you'll be that shining player. You'll be the example of what you should be. And ultimately, like if you can't translate that from like local to kingdom, take a step back and figure out what's causing that issue.
Yeah. Yep. Uh, I had the I got lucky and I played at a field where for many years people were very committed to doing recruitment drives and stuff. So we, on
Yeah.
average we had a 40-player field. So
At
I
one
got
point, I
really used.
think, yeah, I think at one point we had 63 players on average.
Yeah, I got really used to playing in games where there was like 20 to 30 players per team, and that's getting used to that's a big thing. Like if you only get to do that like several times a year, like it's hard to learn the differences between large games and small games. There is a lot, especially when there's a lot going on. There's a lot more you have to think about. Um, but I mean, I got lucky with that, and I was able to learn it relatively early in my Amtgard career. So I have a big advantage. Uh, I have a big advantage compared to the average player for that one. And realistically, you just got to realize it's not. The concepts aren't really different when it comes to field. There's just different needs. But the thing with bigger fields is that because there's so much going on, people have more of that AFK attitude, where
Yeah, they get too
they don't know what to
relaxed.
do. They get too relaxed. They don't know what to do because there's so much more going on, or it feels like it's harder to get the. Sometimes it is realistic, um, but because of all the combination of stuff, the skill sets that they have, they tend to they tend to it tends to increase the hesitance of the average player, you know, and that's always exploitable. So if you take the initiative to try to be a better player in that scenario, you're probably going to be the player, even if you were otherwise not. So, do we have any closing statements?
Um, I guess in some of the other later episodes that we plan on doing, we're gonna be, when we break it down to like specific classes and stuff, like we're gonna try to go through all the classes. We'll be reaching out to, people and some paragons and some other classes, and we'll be looking to bring some people out here for some guest talks and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Um, there'll be a couple people we'll probably be reaching out to directly, but if that's your jam and you wanna, talk about your class and how you got there and some other information, let us know.
Yeah, we will. I did a vague sort of general topic for the first one because I figured it was probably the best time to do it.
Sorry, it only took
Every
2 hours.
Yeah, I mean it was 2 hours of procrastination before we started as well.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and then so we're gonna get into much more focused topics. This one was a weird one to talk about. So out of everything that we're gonna do, this will probably be the least concise one. But there's definitely topics where I can talk basically like in every facet of it, because my whole thing for a long time was looking at the rule book and thinking about how the game worked. Um, but we're gonna get into very, very specific stuff, and then get into like, or we explain basically everything. Some, um, I don't know how many of these podcasts we're gonna do, but
All of them.
probably until we run out of stuff to talk about, and then
Or
we'll be
until we
done
get
with it,
bored. One of the two.
or and then, whatever. I plan to try to go through everything, but
Sounds like
outside
good,
of
yeah.
that, like,
I'll probably post a poll in our local kingdom page. Or see what people are interested in. If there's anything specifically you guys are interested in and want to talk about, let us know. Like I said,
yeah,
I've run a couple of battle game classes in person. Like the last one I ran was Yule 2019. I ran that one in person, so COVID kind of hit shit the bed. Um, so if you guys are interested in specific topics, let us know. We'll see what we can get. I'd also like to do some, like I mentioned, some video reviews and things like that.
yeah, because
So we'll break some
there's a
stuff
lot
down.
more we can say when there's particular information in front of us. Like, if you gave me like a field, I could tell you a billion things. Tell you about what I think players could be doing, why I think they're making mistakes, stuff that they could do differently that would improve the play, um, stuff that like missed opportunities, all that. But it's all on a case by case basis as far as this game. and it's hard to learn, but it is learnable. So that's all I have to say for this. This was a podcast that took actually longer than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, it did.
Here we are. All right, that's it.
2 hours and 15 minutes, and I thought it was gonna be like
I wasn't sure if it was
45
gonna be half an
minutes.
hour. Yeah, I was
So,
thinking that too, but
who
we had a
knows?
lot to talk
Maybe
about. I'm happy
I
about
don't
that.
expect the rest of them to be this long, but if they are, they are. No big deal. But here it is.
All right. Well, we're not gonna drag this on forever. So this was Salad.
And Noodles.
Yeah, and we're over and out.
Peace.